Hello, friends. Welcome to Black Metal and Brews, a program in which I attempt to convey my thoughts on the topics of heavy metal and beer. And I also interview people, which is what we're doing tonight. I'm going to do that thing I do where I post the link to this live stream on Twitter and Facebook, and then I will get things started. So, bear with me for a moment. Hello, friends. We're live on YouTube. The link is up on Twitter, and I'll post that link on YouTube, and then we will get this started. Thank you so much for being patient. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, like some sort of auto post thing, but I don't know what it is yet. So if you're watching and know that, let me know. Hey, that link is getting posted on Facebook. All right. And the link is posted on Facebook. Okay, so welcome to Black Metal and Brews. It's good to see you all. It is a beautiful day here in Brooklyn. A I don't even know how many degrees it is, but it's warm. It's sunny. You can tell because I'm using natural lighting rather than the glowing red things above my head that I often have in these. And we're going to be joined by Courtney Iseman. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing her name right. We'll know once she joins. But she's a beer writer, and she'll tell you more about herself when she comes on. And hello, good to see you there. That Hillsfar Records, Ian. Nice to have you. Ian was the last guest I had on my program on Friday of last week. So if you haven't seen that episode yet, you can watch him bring his dog Crouton on, play some ripping guitar solos, and talking about, hypothetically what it would look like below hell in Satan's basement. So, plug for that for Ian's sake and my own as well, I guess. I guess if you're new here, welcome. I'm assuming each one of these is usually going to people that already know me, but if not, it's cool. And then this is not just a YouTube channel. I also have a website where I write about extreme music, and I sometimes do Twitch things, video games, but not very often. I'm gonna try and get back into that because I had a friend bother me to start doing it again. Today I'm going to be drinking. It's hard to see because the light is so bright. The Interborough Spirits and Ales take on All Together. It's a collaborative beer, or rather a communal community beer, created by Other Half, which is another brewery here in Brooklyn, to benefit the beer community as a whole. And it looks like Courtney is here to join us, so we're going to bring her into the stream.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
Welcome. How's it going?
Okay.
All right. Good to have you here. Good to have you here. I was just about to show people the beer I'm drinking, the Interborough take on the Altogether.
Cool. Have you gotten to have a lot of different Altogether's?
No, this is the only one I've had. I've not been leaving the apartment much. I know that you've actually been posting a lot of really cool adventures to get beers. This was made by a good friend of mine as like a gift, so I was really excited to have it.
Yeah, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, some folks deliver them, I know, and so I'm kind of looking around to see who does and how I can get them.
I recommend Non Sequitur. They, I think that went up today for delivery.
Yeah, I saw that, and I literally about 2 hours prior to that had placed an order with them for other beers. So
maybe add on.
Yeah, I should send them an email and ask them, be like, hey, I noticed you did this shortly after I placed my order. But yeah, I found actually it's interesting. They liked my post on Instagram about interviewing you, and I did not know them yet. I followed immediately because they had a dog mascot, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna
Yeah,
order their
nothing.
food.
Yeah. Yeah, they're awesome. How do you like that interborough?
It's quite good. This is the third back, so I definitely you know I enjoy them. Not my third today. This is my first today. Yeah.
No judgment.
I mean, while I'm not one to judge, it probably wouldn't do so well for my conversational or interviewing skills if I'm like three sheets to the wind on YouTube. So thank you for joining us today. I gave a brief explanation that you're a beer writer, but I'd love if you could, without the job interviewee nature of it, tell us about yourself. What makes you love beer and writing about it and all of that.
Yeah, I actually kind of joke around that I'm a refugee from the fashion industry a bit. That's where I started writing. So that's kind of where I, developed my career being a writer, a journalist, and I'm a copywriter as well. But the whole time, I would say since I was of legal drinking age, I've been more into. I never really drank like regular beer, maybe a little bit of like Bud Light at parties in college or something. So kind of like through Belgian beer and different imports, got into craft beer really early on, and always loved the chase of it. Like when I moved to New York, it's crazy to think about that only 10 years ago there weren't that many craft beer destinations in the city. So kind of the thrill of the hunt, and that kind of began to expand toward traveling around the country and the world in search of beer. And I love connecting with breweries and that whole community. And so, you reach those crossroads in your career. A few years ago, I was like, I really want to do something different that I'm more passionate about. And I, was like, why not beer? Why don't I write about the thing that I love so much? And, the other thing that I'm also, of course, passionate about is music. And I'd sort of been doing that on the side. So I just pivoted a little bit more toward writing about music and beer. And people in the beer community are so awesome, including, people who run beer websites and magazines. And they were really cool about, accepting the fact that I had no beer writing experience and giving me those first shots.
Yeah.
So now for a couple years, it feels like I've been doing it forever in a good way. It feels like home. So now I'm just, making that happen with beer mostly, and still a little bit of like music writing and different things, travel and stuff.
And you are, I forget the terminology, so if I fuck it up, it's not out of disrespect. You're a Cicerone certified beer server?
Yeah.
Okay. What is that process like? Because that's something that I've thought about doing, and it looks daunting, but really beautiful too. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So being a certified beer server, for people that don't know, maybe it's just the first level. It's great for if you were going to be a beer tender, if you're working in a brewery or bar, it's the first step of knowledge, so to speak. For me, I just wanted to, I have never worked in a brewery or a bar or anything like that, but being obsessed with beer for so many years and writing about beer and wanting to be able to take on more, different kinds of projects, I sort of, for my work and for myself, wanted to be able to like have a set curriculum of what I should really know about beer, help me tap into things I didn't know, different brewing methods and learning what makes certain beer styles those styles. The beer server, the first leg of that, I'm a terrible student in terms of studying. So that was like daunting for me. That's an online test. And now I am, especially using this like quarantine time to study for, certified Cicerone, which, would be the next level and is an in-person exam whenever those can happen again. And I'm very scared because my brain just is not holding things, but we'll get there.
I understand. I was one of those kids that was like, I would know the subject, but I would do terribly at school because like studying, like homework just fried my brain and just all that shit. So I get it, even the things I wanted to learn. So And maybe with beer it's better because you can just I'm going to drink and I'll learn from it. Like I definitely remember that moment, probably 8 years ago or so when it clicked, like this is what a saison is supposed to be or whatever, and I started getting the delineation. But it's a daunting thing. I definitely am more experienced in drinking than in classifying. So.
You can it's sort of like fun homework. Like now I have to be the nerd that when I get a beer, when I open a beer that I've never had, I am taking notes on it because, you're drawing those connections and understanding like why that's an IPA and how to identify that versus a pale ale or, just other hundreds of styles. But yeah, I also, same with music, same with history, same with everything. No matter how much I love something, I will talk your ear off about the concepts of it and like cultural impact and blah, blah, blah. But like facts, figures, numbers are like, they just don't stick. So.
I mean, I think especially, now with the internet, everybody can be an expert with enough time, spent, Googling things. I think the experience of things is possibly more important to people anyway, because you can look up the cold data, but you can't. But if you can convey what something feels like or what it at least inspires in you, that's a really important experience. Don't get curious too much, but so that's really cool. What? Now you said that you moved to New York about 10 years ago. Where were you when you had your first craft beer experience? Then I'm assuming it wasn't here.
So I don't know if this was the very first, but the first sort of like regular spot that I associate with early days craft beer drinking was a spot that was in the Lower East Side until sadly maybe a couple of years ago called Spitzer's Corner.
Okay.
Yeah, they just had a ton of it was one of those first places. I'd never been somewhere the beer list like that, basically. There was one. I'm from Rockland County, New York, so Nyack has a little bit of a music scene. So obviously, I there, and there was a bar there. I remember Kelso's Nut Brown Ale was like one of the first craft beers they got there. So that was very exciting. So I was like, what is this? It's not, the beer you're used to seeing everywhere. So maybe that was like number one, but Spitzer's was where I sort of learned about how much beer is out there.
Yeah. No, that's really, I think that's really cool. Like I was spoiled. I grew up in Santa Rosa, California, which is home to. So you go where it's going. I didn't know that I was drinking weird nerd beer. It was just like I lived 3 blocks away from Russian River Brewing Company when I turned 21, and so it was just like, I'm going for happy hour. I'm going to drink a Pliny. I didn't have the internet. I didn't know. I mean, I did not know I was drinking something special. It was just like, I'm going to do this. So it's cool. But it took me until I moved out of California maybe 10 years ago to realize the beauty in those tap rooms where it's just like, here's 50 fucking beers from the whole spectrum, and you haven't heard of 90% of them. That was the moment when I realized that it was bigger than just me going to some spot and having something that wasn't in Budweiser. That's really cool. So I never went to Spitzer's. I'm a New Yorker. I've been here a little under 4 years, so that sounds like a really cool place, though. And similar.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. No, you go.
I was going to ask if you get back to, when you go home, do you go to Russian River and stuff and sort of look at it differently, or?
Yeah, I mean, for one, culturally, it really took off in the last 5 or 6 years in a way it hadn't when I lived there. On Pliny the Younger Day when I lived there, you could just kind of wander on over and have Pliny the Younger. To be fair, though, I wasn't as big into the IPAs, which I think is very common for a younger drinker. I really liked their barrel-aged beers, and I still love those. The Salvation and Damnation, the kind of weird, funky. Belgian beer is always my favorite. So, so I go there. It's different. It's obviously very crowded now. I mean, it was always on a Friday night it would be crowded, but now it's always Friday night crowded. But there's also just California has huge brewing culture, so I don't suffer for lack of good beer when I go home. If anything, it's
No.
like I'm bombarded. My father has kind of picked up beer geekery in the last decade. Like he was a wine guy for the last 40 years, and so I guess in the last 5 to 10, he decided to add beer to the mix, and so now my dad's like, "You've got to try this." It's nice to have your dad being like, "I'm going to get you drunk just because this tastes good." Uh, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, for sure.
And similarly with beer, or what you into extreme music? Because you shared a playlist with me today, and I shared it with Patreon. Maybe not everybody saw it. You had like everything from Naglfar and Darkthrone to Towns Van Zandt and the Cramps and stuff, which is like to me, it's like okay, this is somebody that is not just like you don't just like music, but you're passionate about it. When did you realize that music was more than just something you enjoyed, but like it was your thing?
I think it's because I actually grew up, like when I was a kid, I did theater, like child actor, drama geek, weirdo. So I feel like I literally never knew anything else other than like having your entire life be about music in some way, even though it's obviously a very different kind of music. Although I've always felt like you could draw comparisons just in like theatricality of like extreme music and like there's some lines, but that's another. But yeah, so when I got to high school and I wasn't really doing the theater thing and I was trying to find my way, like I just sort of gravitated toward, what was a group of people that were as obsessed with music as I was, whatever genre that is. And so I kind of like instantly fell in with some older kids who really knew their stuff. They knew obscure bands, like things that were like a whole new world to me. So between that and I think also just like my dad was always into more extreme rock and like more classic metal. So I grew up with it a bit and then that sort of like evolved. And only really maybe in like the first few years of living in the city and could go to different shows and again meet more people that I discovered, punk and bluegrass and old country and things like that.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. I just I appreciate it. I never know what people are going to submit with their playlists. Like I feel like a lot of people just go for very like here's this genre so far. So it was really refreshing to be like, oh no, this is like a whole spectrum. That made me really excited.
That is nice to hear, and I appreciate that because I feel self-conscious about it. I'm like, I'm a spaz. I'm all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite band is The Cure, and I run a black metal website. I think elitism is where insecure people go. Like, if you're comfortable with just loving music, then you're fine.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people get very defensive. They feel that the bands represent them in some way, and I feel like you're always going to be let down if you put too much of yourself into a specific artist or a specific sound.
For sure.
I wanted to ask you too, because in addition to your writing and other interactions in the beer community, you created one of the coolest resources I've seen since the pandemic hit, which was the supportnycbeer.com. And can you tell me a bit about it? I mean, I know what it is, but obviously people watching may not know. So.
Well, thank you very much for checking it out. So I've actually, I would say, have left that alone a bit more recently just because, well, I'll explain sort of, I guess, chronologically speaking, where it came from, but just kind of immediately after, we realized since this has all happened so fast and everything's changed day to day, when we, went from realizing that this pandemic was here and then, the shutdown that we would have to, go through in order to sort of try to control that. I just, kind of immediately started thinking about breweries just because I love those people so much. And like, I know, I think especially on stories I've been working on and people I've been interviewing keep bringing up that craft beer is so social. Like it is the whole economy of that is based on people wanting to come together in tap rooms and all of that goes away with the shutdown. So just immediately, it was a combination of what can I do for this community I love? And also, admittedly, like I, as a freelancer, lost a lot of work immediately when this happened because places were cutting budgets and pivoting their coverage. So I have time on my hands and I want to do something. So I just started collecting, you know, every brewery, every beer store, every beer bar in New York and a little bit outside of New York. What are, you know, are they doing curbside? Are they doing delivery? So I've been tracking that. And because I didn't see it anywhere else, and it's daunting to have to like go to every single business's Instagram or website to try to track that down. I was just trying to maybe get it in one place. The New York Guild then came out with one that is like, of course, like the ultimate authority. So I'm sort of, you know, definitely would tell people to go there now. So now I'm sort of thinking about like what can I do with that website to continue to support the community and like maybe turn it into a different kind of resource.
Yeah. You know, and I'll say yours, I mean, I may be wrong. I think yours was the first resource of that nature. And of course, I mean, a dozen people building them, but I didn't see anything prior to yours. And so, and it was a real godsend for me because I also, you know, I moved to New York, and then by the time I finally got a job where I could actually afford to start looking at beer, I got really sick and spent the last year mostly indoors. So I didn't have a chance to go out and see what the breweries are around here. Like, you know, I knew what some of them were, but probably, you know, I could count on both hands the breweries that I was conscious of having supported. So even for me as a resource, these are other breweries that exist within, you know, 5 miles of me. I didn't know that. So that opened up a lot of things for me. And I mean, I've seen you posting about breweries that I'm now like, oh, now, when I get back out there, when this is all over, I got to go check out like, you know, this, and this. So that's been really cool. And just in general, it inspired me. Like I ordered from upstate from Suarez Family. You know, I got a case from them because I'd been hearing the name for forever, and I was like, oh shit, I've, you know, never tried that. I kept seeing Beer Street post about it on Instagram. I was like, it's time to do that. You posted about Finback, and I need to try Finback now.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Yeah, no, they look it. So you know, that's really cool. And I wanted to touch on something you've mentioned a few times, the sense of community, which I think is really important and interesting because, you know, I think obviously when you get into online spaces, snark and elitism tend to dominate simply because those are loudest voices. But I mean, for me as a total geek without a lot of social skills, beer and music were the places I came to connect with people who were similarly ridiculous about the shit I loved. And what does that community look like for you, and have they overlapped for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, you know, you're right. I think that those communities are really similar, and that might be why we are, you know, like we find such a home in both of them. And, you know, you do have these sort of contrast of people that are like amazing and want to be so into it with you, and then you do have the snarky elite happening in both. Like that is, you know, they're very parallel in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just about, I think the older you get, the more you can tune all that crap out and focus on meeting the people that want to geek out, like the people that want to dissect a song. There's something similar about the people who want to dissect a beer. And I'm like, if you can talk with me about one beer for 45 minutes, like you're my person. And, you know, you see that passion in brewers and people who work in the industry, and it's just like instant kindred spirit. But yeah, I mean, beer people are the best.
And have you, like, do you make more friends at a bar or at a show, do you think? I guess that's maybe unfair because shows people are probably watching the band. But...
Yeah, good one. I mean, maybe even just like at a metal bar versus a beer bar, like that might be, you know. I also think it's really cool how many people, there is a really strong Venn diagram between music and beer professionally speaking. I mean, when you think about groups like KTBC, you know, they have like a very like metal sort of ethos, and like have people brewing, making amazing beer, and their names are out there for that reason, but they're actually, also super into music. Some of them are also musicians. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Six Most Metal Breweries.
I am. I was actually going to ask you about them.
Yeah. So that's another super, they're actually, I think they have a clip reel up on their website now. So I recommend people check that out. I've been able to see some of their episodes at screenings and stuff that they've had at, some of the cool metal venues around the city. I want that show on TV. It's the best. A documentary series about how metal and beer collide at different places and events in this country is like rad.
Yeah, no, I've been wanting to see it because I keep seeing them like posting things. I'm like, okay, they're not inactive, but they also haven't. I want the goods, So I've been waiting to see it. It's funny because I actually want to talk to them for this series I'm doing, but it's like, man, I don't know these people. I haven't interacted with them, but I think they're following me on Twitter or something. Maybe I don't know. But they seem like they're coming from that same place that we're coming from. Speaking of which, I wanted to talk to you about this kind of growing trend of bands having their own beers. Because I know, in full disclosure, I looked up your CV and stuff to see things that you wrote about. You wrote about that, and I was really interested in your thoughts on it. I've only had maybe one or two band beers before. You're an expert here. How many have you tried? Do you have any favorites? Any that let you down? What do you think about that as a general thing?
Yeah, that story that I did for Kerrang was, I was interviewing like almost around the clock. Like that was all I was doing for a few days, and it was like my favorite thing I've ever worked on because you had. So kind of the way I was coming at it was I feel like there were some band beers out there that I'd had from really mainstream breweries and like very famous bands, and you're like, how much do they actually work on this? Is a band just slapping their name? Like a Kiss beer, an AC/DC beer. Hey, I love those bands, but like they're not making that beer, and it's just sort of it's comparable to drinking just a big beer, American lager, whatever name on it. But when you dig into some of the more, especially going more into like extreme music, what I found out interviewing people, like I Hate God and, different bands that I've worked with, KCDC and Three Floyds and, these breweries that have sort of a metal identity, beers are great. And it's because bands give a shit. Like they love craft beer. It's not just like a marketing tactic. And it shows, I'm like, I kind of wasn't sure where I stood when I started working on the story. And after talking to the bands and the breweries on both sides of the partnership and having some of the beers, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, I 3 interviews ago on this series I'm doing, I spoke with a band that played a Dark Lord Day event, and I was like, that's I've had maybe 2 beers from Three Floyds, and both, and I was like, oh shit, like that, like Three Floyds, Surly, True, and Hammerheart are kind of like there's like the metal breweries that I really want to geek out with, and I've only had Three Floyds. I've never had from the other ones. I don't know if you.
You can find True around the city. Yeah.
Really, where do you? Does it shift, or is it usually on tap or in?
Yeah, usually on tap. So obviously a little harder right now because I used to be able to get at places like the Well, and I feel like it was popping up more before we shut down. So I would definitely keep an eye out because they're super special.
That's good to know. We used to practice in the practice spaces next to the Well, and so that was like where we'd go to drink too much after practice. Okay, so that's good to know. I'm gonna store that in my mind. And I'm frustrated because I've drank with the Hammerheart guys, but I've never had their beer. So I'm just like, we had good beers. We were in Europe. I remember I asked him, I said, do you by any chance have any of your beer here? And he's like, no, absolutely not. It was still really cool. And another thing that you commented on or you wrote about that I thought was fascinating because I was like geeking out on your scholarly side of it about the gene that prevents people from enjoying bitterness in beer. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, in general, obviously, taste is sometimes hardwired, sometimes acquired. I thought that was fascinating. Did you ever have a period where bitter beer was like just off limits for you, or is there a style of beer that you don't like?
I never had that, but I'm like thankful, I guess, because I love bitter stuff, even beyond beer. But I thought, yeah, that was so interesting because you just have so many people who don't know why, but they're just like, oh, an IPA is disgusting. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that there's like science, making that decision. Um, as far as beer styles for me, I mean, I'm definitely an IPA girl, and then I love my German beer. I love like a Schwarz beer, a dark lager. Like porters and stouts and some dark stuff. I'm pretty much only not crazy about sours.
Okay.
Yeah, I
And
can like
that's
they'll come along. Like special ones will come along that are just like too good. But yeah, that's like just I don't know why. Maybe there's some gene for sour stuff. I don't know.
Well, I mean, some sort. I mean, to be fair, anytime a style seems to become a trend, and maybe this is just me because it it becomes diluted in terms of quality because you get everybody doing it, including people who maybe shouldn't be as much. And so, like, I've had some sours that was just kind of like a step away from drinking vinegar, sweet vinegar or something, but still, it's like, okay, I love a sour beer, and I don't need this.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
that's
I
a
think
good.
I witnessed that with IPAs, maybe it is, especially like around 2011 to 2014, especially. It was just like everybody was like trying to make like a triple IPA, and it was like I think there was one. It was a San Diego brewery it had one called Palate Wrecker, and I'm like, yeah, that's the whole thing I don't want. Like, if you are bragging about this fucking up my palate, I don't want that. I think it was Green Flash maybe that made that. I was just
Yeah, I think so.
like I want to have this beer and love it, and then have a different beer and love that beer. I don't like so. But I mean, so on that level, I do get people's issues with IPAs because for a minute I was just like, man, they need to stop this. But the sour scene in the last few years has really become densely saturated.
Yeah.
Uh, and I do think I haven't had as many good ones here on the East Coast. When I lived on the West Coast, there were some ones I really loved. But I don't think that's anything other than just what I've had the luxury of
Mhm.
doing. I'm sure that there's plenty of good out here, but I remember I suck at names so bad. I had a friend tell me the name because I forgot. There's one in like coastal Oregon that makes these phenomenal sour beers I just loved, but I can't for the life of me remember it now because it's probably been 5 years since I've had the beer.
Right.
Um,
Understand.
yeah. Are there any beers? Because I feel like with beer people, there's always this tendency to want to explore something new instead of going with an old reliable beer. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I have that impulse, and maybe you do too. Just that sense of like I have to discover something new. Are there any beers that defy that for you, where you just always would love to have this beer on hand?
Maybe not. Is that bad? I like really, I mean, like, I absolutely have my favorites that when I see them, especially for drinking at home, I'm like, oh, that's something if I'm going to invest in a 4 pack, I'm happy to grab them. But especially if I'm out, I almost always like, again, I have beer I really love, but if I see something new, I gotta have that new beer.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. There's like around the holidays, I always get a Delirium Noel because it's just like, oh, I love this. But like, I'm the same way. Where there are some reliable ones, or like some of the bars in my neighborhood don't have a big selection, but I know they'll always have one of these three beers that are great. You know, but yeah, no, I think that's a thing. But I always wonder because some people do have them. They're like, yeah, this beer I could drink every day and always love it. But even amazing life changing beers, I'm still like, okay, I know what that's like. I want to have a new experience. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like a dog chasing its own tail doing that though. And we got a comment here, and I love that. Like, please, guys, if you're watching, feel free to comment. Sometimes you want a beer rather than the 50 ingredient creation. And that's from our pal Jim in Canada. He's a regular watcher. I'm not sure which. I mean, I feel like that's still a broad category. I feel like most beers don't have that many ingredients, but
I think there's some crazy stouts and things out there that they're like, we put donuts, cookies, cake, bacon, chili. And you know what? Every now and then it works. There are some breweries who just know how to do that. I mean, Evil Twin, they can pull off an insane concoction, but then you're saying when, especially when styles get sort of saturated, the problem is then when a brewery who might be amazing at making a different style, but then they want to try to do that, and it's like, oh, but don't.
yeah, I remember. I mean, again, we're talking probably 8 years ago. Rogue started doing that. Like they started with the Voodoo Donut series, which I don't know if you remember those or if you tried them, but they weren't all as good as they could have been. They had like the maple bacon donut ale and the peanut butter banana donut ale, and they were. I think they were all ales too. They weren't even like stouts or anything. And I'm just I actually got the better of me, and I bought them because I was like 25 or something, and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And I didn't always live to enjoy that. It's sometimes, especially I think that comes to a point that I feel like, because it's a curiosity of mine, I feel like you'd be better qualified to explain this. Pairing beer with food. I'm a heathen, and I'll just drink whatever I want to drink with whatever I want to eat. Do you feel, or do you have experience in pairing beer with food? And if so, like, do you have any amazing pairings that you've enjoyed?
I'm not as strict. I'm a little bit of a heathen personally by myself. It is something that you are studying a lot of for the Cicerone tests, and I've been doing a lot more writing about pairing. So I've been doing more research. I mean, I do kind of stick to some of the basic rules of matching intensity, so you're not getting anything that's overpowering your beer, is not overpowering your food, or vice versa. And then I think what's really fun is to think about mimicking other flavor combinations that you're familiar with. So one, and it's actually an example that I was studying for the Cicerone, but I became obsessed with it, is like if you have a rich chocolate dessert or something, pairing that with like a creek, because, it's getting that like chocolate covered fruit sensation, but it's also like very carbonated and there's a little bit of like to go through the richness. So I think if you're thinking about intensity and then like comparing and contrasting to sort of get interesting flavor combos going, you're doing good.
Okay, that you've already inspired me. That sounds wrong, like, in the way that I want it to be wrong. Because like I think the only like pairing I've ever done really was like going for like sweeter things with a curry, because this is like, or like a kolsch with the curry, because it's like, oh, I do not want something that's going to be that, but yeah. I have no training in any of this at all, so it's just kind of like, that sounds good though. I'm going to be thinking of that. I haven't had a creek in a long time either, so
I know.
Now, I've got a birthday in a couple of weeks. Oh, you've just given me all I needed.
Celebration.
I'll be like, this is for research.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Sorry, I'm now daydreaming about berries and chocolate cake. And with following that, there's definitely a tendency I've seen in both in kind of I touched on this with the beers that you would try again. Do you have the same sort of compulsion with music? Like, have you fallen into record collector culture as well? And just that, like, scrolling through Bandcamp tags looking for new things?
I am sadly kind of the opposite with music, especially depending on what's going on in the world and life.
Yeah.
I will have sort of it's really weird. And I've kind of always been this way, like as an adult. I will go through these bursts where for a couple months I will be obsessed over finding music, and then I'll kind of like collect my new bands, like, and squirrel them away with like the ones I already love, that like add them to the collection. And then I also do that thing where I just will like listen to one band for a month straight and kind of overdo it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, and especially it also, I mean, I'm not someone that's like on a regular beat with music writing. I think that would help me more. I'm more writing about like like more rare, like, oh, this topic struck me. So yeah, I'll come out of my hole for a minute, like gather what I like, and then I kind of disappear back and like go through stages with bands. So,
Do you have any recent gatherings that you want to gush about?
well, I actually what I put on it for me, Impulsive Serve was like a new one, just because that's not something that I had in my rotation. And like Nagelfar, I was like excited about that album because I hadn't listened to them in a while, so I kind of like, you don't forget about them, but it had been a long time. And then that album came out, and they're amazing.
Yeah. Nagelfar was one of those bands I remember when I was a teenager. I lived in a smaller town outside of Santa Rosa, and we had a dial-up connection, literally the only option that was available in like 2002. And so I would go to the Century Media website and download MP3s one at a time over, legally downloaded the record label. And it would take like an hour to get a 3-minute song, or in this case, probably a 6-minute song or whatever. And I remember downloading a song of theirs. And, this is before I knew what death or black metal was. I just knew it was metal, and I liked it. So it was definitely a throwback for me, but in a good way, because I also didn't know that song. So thank you for that. Are there, and similarly, I guess, are there any pandemic beers that have really excited you? I know that you've been making the rounds on your Instagram, showing a lot of really cool beers. Have there been any breweries or specific beers in the last couple of months that have really excited you and opened things up?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I've like really gotten into Non Sequitur, and also Torch and Crown. Those are, two newer operators on the scene that sort of really like kick things into high gear during all of this. And I love Brick City in New Jersey. They're one of my favorites. I love their IPAs. They do special things with them. Trying to think who else. I mean, there's so many. Finback, as you brought up before, I feel very spoiled because where I live, I'm sort of like have access to like Gowanus and like Carroll Gardens. So like Aller Half and Strong Rope and Folks Beer, like it's a nice variety. And Finback is opening a location within walking distance. So they have like a pop-up right now. So that's been a weekly trip.
That's great. No, that's amazing. I'm kind of right where Bushwick and Ridgewood meet, so there's less here. Although, I mean, it's an incredible neighborhood. I love it. I wouldn't, I say it today. I wouldn't live anywhere else until my rent gets raised, and I have to, I guess. But the very New York problem, I guess. But yeah, no, we don't have a strong brewery presence here, except for KCBC, of course. They're 10-minute walk from me, maybe.
Awesome.
And oddly enough, I've never been. I've had their beers, but not in the tasting room. So that's definitely like I've made this list. I'm like, all these things I take for granted, like doing this next.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, it's fun to have that list to look forward to.
No, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like during this, I feel like you have to have something to look forward to, because I don't know about you. Monday looks like Sunday looks like the last month of my life. And even if you're an easygoing person, or if your life isn't too bad, like I'm sure you can tell, my apartment is at least kind of pretty. I like to live in it. And I take no responsibility. My girlfriend did all of the decoration. So it's like I'm comfortable at home, but it doesn't mean that it's not easy to get lost in that tedium. So like having things to look forward to, whether it's a beer or Have you watched any live stream concerts during this? Like I've been losing my mind about them.
No, not really. I did Dropkick Murphys, like, was right away, I think, because St. Patrick's Day happened, like, right at the beginning of all of it.
Right.
And that was, like, a show that I kind of was, like, a tradition for me.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have to watch it in some capacity. But you know what? We are all dealing with this differently and different, going through different emotions. And I hate to say it, but it bums me out to watch them. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not there. I will sort of, like, dip and watch things, like, clips of things later just to be like, oh, I love this song and I'll hear it live. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, I just think about, I'm sure concerts are a bit further down the line as far as when things come back, but I'm like, I just want to be looking forward to that.
No, I get that entirely. And so our friend Jim has said the Enslaved show was great. I didn't see that. I found out that Enslaved did their live show the day after it happened because people posting about how great it was. I'm like, I mean, for me, yeah, no, and that's the only. I feel like a geek because I'm really about to do this, but like I watched the Iranzi Pazuzu one, and the record just came in the mail the other day. I don't know if you're a fan, but I really love them. That was really cool for me. But it was like one of those things where it definitely. I think if I was watching something and it felt like I was just in the crowd, it would make me a little more sad. But this one was like it was the band on a stage, but they filmed it with the quarantine in mind. So it was like professional angles and weird art shots of the band. So it was almost like they took some of that like Alexander McQueen sort of aesthetic of like just weird, dark, stark, harsh contrast.
Okay.
And, so it was like an art concert film. I really was like, okay, I don't feel like this is a concert I'm missing so much as a video experience that I'm having, and I was glad for that because we like a week later watched very original the band OMD did a stream of a show they played in November, so it's like a full house, but they had filmed this concert. And it was filmed from like the soundboard or whatever. But, and you could see like somebody's hand getting in front of the camera, and I'm like, oh, I miss having tall people in front of me. Like, I mean, which I don't at all, but also like, oh yeah, of course the 6'3" guys in front of me, like, like that's it brought back a lot, and not always in a good way, but it was still I enjoyed it, but I can also see that being like, fuck,
I know. It does make you, like, I don't know if you've had this experience, but there's definitely like talking about like people in front of you. I'm 5 foot tall, so I have had a hard time since I started going to shows. But there's so much that I feel like, I feel like humans do this, so hopefully this lasts for me, but I'm like, I'm never taking these things for granted again. Like, I would love to have someone tall in front of me at a show right now, when all I did was complain about that.
No, totally. I mean, I'm 5'11" and I have that problem, so it's like, because invariably, if I'm surrounded by my friends who are all like in the 5'8", 5'9" range, because none of us are tall, there will be somebody who's like 6'5" that wants to stand in front of us.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know how that works. I don't know. It's like there's got to be a scientific equation for like concert height density. Like,
yes, do that article, please.
I'm sending the pitch after we get off here. I don't know who will take it, but somebody will. No, but I mean, it's weird. Like, I think, and again, I know that you're at least able to get outside, for walks and drives. I'm assuming that you drove when you went to New Jersey, at least. But
yeah, that'd be a long walk.
I never know. I mean, maybe somebody else picked you up. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But like for us, we've only gone outside maybe 5 times in the last couple months because if I go to the grocery store, it's too crowded, so we just like got groceries delivered. We've been going to the cemetery though because nobody's in there and it's a big open space to walk around.
Yeah.
I think we're lucky to live near one. I don't know how many there are near you, but it's weird, as you were saying, all the things that I took for granted about regular life, even just going to the coffee shop up the block and, talking shit with the kids that serve me coffee for a minute. Like, I'm like, oh man, like that human contact is really different now. How has it just kind of came to mind? Like I don't have a question sheet because this is an obvious. I lost all my pen. I had a pen a week ago and I don't know where it went. So I was just like, I'm gonna, you
No.
know, like I have enough curiosity. How has writing changed for you since the pandemic? Because like for me, I haven't been pitching in about a year because I was sick last year. Um, but I've seen a lot of my friends who regularly freelance and aren't lucky to be on TV like me. How has that changed, and how has that impacted your relationship with writing?
I mean, the process itself hasn't changed much for me because I was working from home mostly for a couple years before this. And it's like you're saying, as far as human interaction, like I'm really good by myself. I prefer to be by myself for like a portion of the day while I'm working. So that didn't change. But like now I always needed that balance of them being able to go out and like sometimes go work at a coffee shop or, a beer bar or something.
Yeah.
So the only way that the actual process has changed. But as I mentioned before, as soon as it started, there were certain, outlets that had to cut their freelance budgets or change their coverage to things that are only, related to the pandemic. So I am writing less. In picking up a little bit more now, I think now that we're out of that, like, oh, this will only be for 2 months. Now that we're like learning that we have to balance this with life and sort of incorporate it into finding a new way forward. I've been, being able to pitch and land some more stories, especially about how the beer industry is changing and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's almost forced me to get even more creative and like you have a lot more time to think. Like it's not just rapid fire anymore. Like, oh, I saw this thing and I'm gonna pitch about it. You're like, you don't have as much to pitch about. You don't have as much to write about. So you're really digging much deeper and finding bigger stories and working on them a lot more. So I would say for the most part, it's like slower and more introspective now.
Does that change the way that you are experiencing the act of writing itself? Like for me, I know when I'm writing, like just something like I hate to say it, but like I've definitely written things that bordered on, because somebody wanted the article and I was going to get paid $75 to do it or whatever. But now it's like, do you find that you're really able to enjoy what you're writing about more now that you know that like you can dig like that instead of having?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's a good positive. I mean, to find a silver lining in this, it's like, does it suck to work less? Yeah, but you're right. I'm really getting to work on stories that which I did before, but it was like peppered in with other stuff that like you're firing off, just quicker for the deadline. It's like a news piece, whatever. So yeah, I mean, even when I wrote about the All Together collaboration, I got to actually interview like 10 breweries about that and like kind of check in with what they were doing across the country. It's like that probably before for me would have just been a really quick short news piece, and instead I got to talk to people taking it and doing different things with it. And so yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. It's been nice to like really dig into stuff you're passionate about getting into.
And how many of the altogether beers have you tried? I'm curious, and how different have they been from each other?
It's bad I haven't been keeping count.
I'm not judging.
Maybe like I would say between 5 and 10. And I think you can tell who, like, breweries are definitely putting their own stamp on it, which I like. Trying to even think, like, I think so far KCBC actually might have been one of my favorites.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, like Other Half wrote the recipe for the base, but they are not doing too shabby with it either. I would love to try some more from outside the city. Yeah.
Because I've been really curious about the ones farther out, because I looked, and I last checked, I mean, a couple weeks, it was, hundreds of breweries around the country, if not the globe, doing it, which And now I forget, and I truly forget. This isn't just a chance to ask a question. What is the cause that it benefits? I know it's for beer industry folks, but specifically, do you remember the name of what the beer is benefiting? I'm not trying to put you on the
I
spot.
believe it's the restaurant. I think it's the Restaurant Community Workers Fund, and I hope I'm getting the acronym right. But because I think it's the RCWF. I'm sure if you Googled that, even if I'm like twisting words, it'll come up. But it's a fund for the different hospitality communities.
Yeah, okay, because I knew it was helping hospitality workers. I'm just like, oh, I forget entirely what it is. Yeah. And for those watching, Other Half Brewing here in Brooklyn, New York, created this beer recipe that they then distributed as like open source beer, essentially. Everybody to brew to benefit hospitality workers, and I think that's really cool, and specifically as a response to the pandemic.
Right. It was really cool. A really cool project. I mean, speaking of ones around the country, like how badly do you want to try ones from around the world? Like it's so there are breweries in Asia doing this, all together collab.
Oh, and the only Asian beer, and I don't even know if it's a proper Asian beer, is the Hitachino Nest beer. That's the only one I've had, and I know that that's been through distributors and maybe not even brewed there, but it's their recipe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I definitely know that Sapporo and Kirin Ichiban are not in any way representative of their craft communities out there. I had maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a fellow from Costa Rica watching on YouTube somehow. I don't know how he found me. He hadn't been following me online. He just joined the stream and was telling me about the Costa Rican craft beer community. And I was like really excited just because I've never been to Costa Rica. Little things like that are, I think people there's often this very American centric and white European centric view on craft beer, but it's not limited to us. I'm itching to try it elsewhere.
Yeah, that's what's amazing about traveling with beer in mind is sort of creating that itinerary. Because I mean, again, that happens in things outside of beer too. And when I used to write for Invisible Oranges, I got the chance to dig into the metal scene, and somewhere I did a story on metal in Median. And it's like, oh yeah, like metal isn't always just Scandinavian or depending on what genre you're listening to. It's not so like European or American centric. And so you apply that to craft beer and you find some amazing things. I want to do more exploring outside of Europe and America with beer. I've so far did a little bit in South Africa. They're doing some really cool things. And more recently, Mexico City has a really cool scene. It's kind of small what I experienced, but like very vibrant and creative and cool.
I've heard Mexico City is just awesome for counterculture in general. I have a lot of friends in bands who played there and said it was amazing. So
it is.
And have you done a lot of travel writing? I saw bits and pieces on your website that touched on it, but because that would be my dream. Would be like, oh, I can travel and get paid to talk about that. Like that sounds so good.
I know, that is the dream job. I would not call myself a travel writer because that's not, I'm not like being flown to cover a new resort or something or like you're
not in the in-flight magazine yet.
No. But because I would say that where my work goes into travel is just, again, being able to write about like guides to restaurants and bars in different cities. So more from the eating and drinking standpoint, what's going on in different destinations. So that's sort of crossover for me.
And you wrote one article, and of course I gravitated towards this, on traveling and eating with your dog.
Oh yeah.
For one, I love an excuse to talk about a dog. The last guest I had his dog join him on camera when he came on. What in general, what has your experience been like, and is the culture changing around dining out with a four-legged companion? How is that shifting?
Yeah, I think it's getting a lot more accepted. It's one of the things I've also always loved about brewery culture. that most tap rooms are dog friendly, and like to the nth degree. Like they sell dog stuff and there's tons of dogs, and the people who work at the brewery will like come out and play with your dog. It's like a really fun icebreaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think restaurants are getting better too. I mean, I'm not one of those people that's like fighting to, break health codes to eat with my dog. I'm just like, oh, if you have an outdoor area and it's safe and everyone's comfortable and everyone's dogs are well behaved and trained, it's a nice thing to be able to do.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for people watching this, your dog's name is Barbie, and she is super cute.
Thank you.
She's a pug?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm bad at like the pug versus Boston Terrier versus other similar small dogs. But yeah, she's a really cute pug. She can be found on your socials.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm a ridiculous sucker for people's pets. I don't know. Had I planned my website out better, I would have just been like interviewing heavy metal pet people, I guess. There was that person who did a book just photographing metal dudes with cats. I don't know if you remember that.
Such a good one.
And I remember I started my website like maybe a year prior to her doing that and thinking, oh shit, this is genius. And also, I mean, aside from the tenderness it showed, I was like, I want to look at pictures of cats. Like, that's my thing. That was really cool. And we've hit the hour mark, which is typically about where these things run. And I certainly don't mean to keep you any longer than you need to be here. So I guess I'll leave you. I know I already any pandemic discoveries, but are there any 2020 albums that have been exciting to you so far? I've been asking everybody this. Are there any records that will come out this year that you feel like excited about?
Well, I mean, no pun intended, or maybe intended not to be a broken record, but yeah, Sarah Cloth from Naglfar, just because especially the song I put on the playlist, Vortex of Negativity, I mean, like, what a perfect title for what's happening. And then Paradise Lost had, I think Obsidian came out this year, so they're one of my favorites. Yay!
Yeah, I just got that with that Neurons. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think other than that, I'm kind of doing the comfort thing. Like, I mean, I'll listen to like mixes of things, but as far as albums, I'll retreat into my Town Van Zandt and my Alice Cooper.
It's definitely, I think, with all this going on, it's definitely a comforting kind of year. I mean, I had like last week, it was like my 90s week, and I listened to like everything did in the 90s at least. And I know Billy Corgan kind of sucks now, but just like, that's my childhood. And then I did all the Nine Inch Nails and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I have to do this, because it's like, what is kind of like, what is the structure for which my taste has been built? And it was totally those bands. So I get that. Yeah, no, that like you inspired me. Like I'm definitely going to be checking out that Naglfar more in full. That Paradise Lost, like I always liked them, but it really surprised me how good that could be for a band that's 30 years deep into a career like that. Like holy shit.
I know. There's so many that are just still, I'm like, just getting better with age, maybe. I mean, bands like Obituary and yes, I have a few bands that have broken my heart. Not to throw shade in Flames, but yeah.
And it's been like 15 years since In Flames shifted, and I still am not over it because of how much
I know.
I mean, I'll say it's been about a decade since I saw them live last, but at least in 2009 they were still playing old stuff. Like they still played Moonshield.
Yeah.
And even like, to be fair, because I'm as old as a lot of In Flames fans, but I'm like I was a teenager when Reroute to Remain came out, so I still loved that. And they played a like Cloud Connected and shit when I saw them. But again, that was now 11 years ago, which is weird to think about. But I hope, because like I always want them to put out something that'll like do that for me again, and they never quite do. Uh,
They're not coming back.
no, I don't think they are. But also, they're more successful than ever, and I'm glad for that. But like,
Wait, am I crazy? Did they pivot? I want to say that they now have a beer bar or something in Gothenburg. Did I
that
read?
wouldn't that would not surprise me at all. But I don't know. Oh God, we got corn. I mean, it's not inaccurate. More than just corn, but like I feel like because I remember I had the In Flames DVD that came out in like 2003, and they did a Pantera cover on there. So it's like I'm not gonna blame corn entirely. I feel like that groove metal thing is just like insidious. Yeah, I think that they did. I feel like Anders, the singer, posted something about that at some point. And I know, but I just got to say, I'm grateful that At the Gates have remained incredible since they came back.
Yes.
And I know that they're also beer geeks. Maybe one day I'll get Tampa on here and talk to him. That'd be a dream. Yeah, no, but oh my gosh, if I were to list all the bands that have broken my heart, like it's
I
too.
know.
I mean, like, and some of them I can't even fault them. Like Opeth, like I don't fault them. They're still a good band. I late '90s, early aughts sound they had.
Yeah.
They're a good prog rock band. I just don't listen to a lot of prog rock.
Yeah.
And yeah. Yeah. Oh God, In Flames. Sorry, you got me. You got me on a dark path here. Like,
Sorry.
that whole Century Media Nuclear Blast melodic death metal thing of like the late '90s, early 2000s was totally. That was kind of like the era of metalcore, and so that was like similar enough to get me away from the hardcore stuff. But also, like it was totally my gateway. Like, oh, suddenly I'm listening to, it felt extreme at the time, Dimmu Borgir and stuff. It was like, which I mean, I still like them, but I realize now that they're not the scariest band on earth like I thought they were when I was 15.
I know.
Yeah, like I mean, I also remember when I thought Guar was actually an evil looking band, and then I'm like, oh no, it's just a joke. This is cluelessness and youth. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been an absolute delight. I hope to see you out in the real world once we're able to go to bars and shows and see each other. And
yes,
thank you for all you do. And I'm going to keep an eye on your future writings because I think that you do really interesting and valuable things to contribute to beer culture in New York and beyond. So thank you for that. And let me know how continuing to study for your Cicerone goes because I maybe not as soon as you, but it's a dream of mine to do that sort of thing. So
study buddies.
All right. Well, take care, Courtney. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right. And thank you, friends, for sticking with us. That was super fun, exciting time. I love doing these little conversations, and I just want to take a minute now for the couple of you still watching to say that in keeping with the beer writing tradition this week, on Friday, and I'll be announcing this tomorrow morning, I am going to be interviewing Adam Tepedelen, whose name I'm totally butchering, I'm sure. He's the author of The Brutal Truth, Guide to Extreme Beers. He's been a beer columnist for Decibel Magazine for years, and he's a great guy. And I thought getting Courtney and Adam in the same week would just be incredible for me. And that I've never been more anxious because these are people who do something that I wish I could do. My understanding of beer is, I love it, but I don't understand the intricacies, and I've never been paid to write about it the way I've been paid to write about heavy metal. So that was really cool. And now I get to talk to one of the people that inspired me to start doing what I'm doing. So thank you guys for being here. If you like what I'm doing and have a couple bucks to throw my way, these cost money to make because I'm paying for a service to stream like this. So it's patreon.com/blackmetalandbrews. Nothing is kept behind a paywall because there's a pandemic going on. That would be cruel. But if you have $1 or $2 to throw my way, I'm posting daily playlists there, and you'll help me pay to keep doing this, which I hope is interesting and entertaining for you. Also, send me an email or leave a comment if there's somebody you'd like me to talk to on here. I would love to talk to more people, and I'm sure that some of you have ideas that I wouldn't have thought about. So let me know. I'd love to see them, love to hear them. I'm Ben. I was joined today by, again, Courtney Iseman. There's links in the description of the video to her work and her Instagram or her Twitter. So check her out. Check out my stuff if you haven't already. And drink yourself something good. Cheers. Thanks for being here.